Hey guys, what does the Bible say about guns? A little bit of change of what we normally do on this channel, and I hope that you won't necessarily be turned off and want to unsubscribe and click away. Even if you're not a Christian, it's important to know what the Bible says because you may get in that discussion with people about guns. So if you are not a gun person or not a Christian, I think this video is still for you. So what does the Bible say about guns? Well, last time I checked, there weren't any guns around in Bible times. So we look at the parallel to that, self-defense, the different weapons that they may have had. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to open up our Bibles. Matthew 26, 51 to 55. I'm going out of New King James here. So this is in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus is about to be handed over to the bad guys. Starting with 51, suddenly one of those who were with them, we find out is Peter in other translations, stretched out his hand and drew his sword, struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. Jesus said to him, "Put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword shall perish by the sword." This next part is really important. He talks about, I could bring angels down to protect me. In 54, he goes on to say, how then could the scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be happened thus? And that's an important thing, though, because he was not telling Peter to put away his sword because it was inappropriate to have. He was telling him to put it away because the prophecy had to be fulfilled and he had to be delivered over to the Sanhedrin to stand trial. So this story of how the servant had his ear cut off is in all four of the Gospels, and I think it's very interesting. That's one of the few stories that is in every single Gospel. So let's talk about Peter had his sword with him, and why did that happen? Well, earlier we see the reason why he is armed. In Luke 22:35 to 38, it does talk about how Jesus did send him out with a money bag, sack, sandals, and he asked him, did you lack anything? They said nothing. Then he says, but now things have changed. He says, he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a sack. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. So it sounds like it's a pretty important thing. Jesus wanted them to have a sword, and it was so important that they were to sell things and buy them if they did not have them. So why did they need swords? I mean, they were traveling, they were missionaries, so they were told to have swords for protection. And I think it's really interesting. It's kind of comical, actually. In 38, they said, Lord, look, here are 2 swords. And Jesus said to them, that is enough. And I think it's interesting that, so there's 12 disciples and they have 2 swords, so that means 1 sword for every 6 people. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but maybe that's kind of what he's talking about with a concealed weapon. That it's not something that everyone needs to carry, but if 1 out of 6 people carried, probably be a pretty safe place. So Jesus himself is condoning carrying weapons, concealed weapons. So yeah, was Jesus a gun guy? Well, he was a sword guy. So he did. It was okay, and it was commonplace for him to carry that. We talk about in the Good Samaritan. He was traveling on a road that was very dangerous. So in Bible times, there was a lot of bandits that would hide on the side of roads, and the Good Samaritan was beat up. Now that wasn't really a story about weapons necessarily. It was a lack of weapons that he had, and he did get beat up. So it was a commonplace back in those times to be armed and just protecting yourself. Later in Luke chapter 22 and verse 49, the disciples say, should we attack? When they talk about the mob coming up on them. And I think it's interesting that Jesus didn't actually answer that question. Peter did attack, and it was obviously against the Lord's will when he went for the guy. He probably was going for his neck, and the guy moved and he hit his ear and he cut it off. Jesus did perform a miracle and put the ear back on the guy, Malchus. And the lesson that we learn in this passage, where Peter is trigger happy, so to say, is that discretion. It is okay for us to carry weapons, a gun for instance. In fact, Jesus told them to sell their garment and buy a weapon. Discretion is definitely the better part of valor here. Again, the same story. This one's in John 18:10 through 11. I think Jesus's response is so appropriate, and it speaks volumes. If Jesus was anti-gun, he would have said, "What are you doing with that sword? How did you get that? That shouldn't be something that, one of my disciples should carry." He does not say that. He says, "Peter, put it back in its sheath." In other words, don't stop carrying it. Just put it away. You took it out at the wrong time. Kind of saying, holster that firearm. And he goes on to say, "I need to drink of this cup." He needs to fulfill that prophecy. And there's obviously a lot of information in the Bible when it comes to loving your neighbor. But the Bible does not talk about giving yourself up as a sacrifice if there is aggressor. That type of self-defense is very much justified in the Bible. So what does the Old Testament say about self-defense and weapons? Well, the most obvious verse that comes to mind is the "thou shalt not kill." I guess a lot of opponents might use that, saying that you should never kill anything ever. Like if there's a mosquito on your arm or a bug on the floor, or shooting a rabbit and eating it, or like home defense. Well, let's take a look at that verse a little closer. So in Exodus 20, we see "thou shalt not murder." Very brief and concise verse. There's not anything else to it except those 4 words. So it says, "You shall not murder." There's 2 different Hebrew words, ratzak and mut, that are used here. One being to put to death, and the other means to murder, respectively. The word mut, M-U-T, is the one that is to actually murder. The definition of these words is very specific. Ratzak also covers death due to carelessness or negligence, or like a soldier would kill during, like in a wartime, and that is not what the verse is talking about. The other second word, mut, is the one that is used in the Bible, and "thou shalt not kill," and it's talking about taking another life by committing murder. Well, some translations actually go on to say "thou shalt not murder" instead. So what does the Bible say about killing? If you are killing in a self-defense situation, that is definitely justified according to the Bible. We see that in the New and the Old Testament. So I want to know what you guys think about that. I mean, definitely comment below. I know you maybe weren't expecting like a Bible study on this channel, and I don't know if we'll do that again, but it's something a little bit different, and it's something that's important to me. But let me know what you think down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Guys, I just started a Facebook page. It's just called Hungry Man 97. You can search it and click on the link down below. I'll put it in the description. I'd love to see you guys, like that page. We'll put some cool stuff on there, some entertaining stuff. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.